You have all betrayed me. Do I appear to be a fool in your eyes? In my own kingdom, in my own palace? You, my husband, the king of this land, after everything we have built together, you chose shame over loyalty. And you secretly carried his child. You gazed into my eyes daily and deceived me. And this child, the evidence of your betrayal, you believed I would never discover. You assumed a queen does not perceive what transpires beneath her crown. My heart placed IDS trust in you. My throne offered you protection. And this is how you repay me. You have shattered not only my marriage but my kingdom. Tell me, why should I spare any of you? The three of you will face consequences. In the kingdom of It, the elders often remarked that destiny never forgets where it has been deceived. It may proceed slowly and take an alternate route, but it ultimately returns. In a small village of mud huts, a young man named Efatu sat outside his home beneath the dim evening sky. He was not yet a king, nor was he seated on any throne. Instead, he was a troubled man burdened with heavy thoughts. He struggled to find his place among the influential men of It, and many rivals mocked him. They regarded him as insignificant, a man who would never don the crown. Each day, he heard whispers that he was too weak and that the spirits did not favor him. These remarks wounded Efatu deeply, yet he endeavored to conceal his pain. Beside him stood his wife Obioma, a woman of fierce spirit and strong heart. While others derided him, Opa never wavered in her faith. She held his hand and said, "My husband, do not heed their words. I know greatness resides within you. Destiny may move slowly, but it will not overlook you." One night, after enduring another day of humiliation, If sat on a wooden stool outside their hut, gazing at the moon and sighing. Obioma emerged and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "What troubles you, my love?" she inquired softly. If Efatu attempted to smile, he remarked, "It is nothing," yet his eyes were filled with concern. Obioma frowned, witnessing his distress. "They mocked you again today, did they not?" If Efatu nodded silently, stating that they claim I will never ascend to the throne, that the gods have not favored me. Oben knelt beside him, gazing into his eyes. "Do you believe their words?" If Efatu shrugged. "I lack a prominent family name. I possess no army. Only you stand by my side." Obioma grasped his hand. "One true ally suffices. I have faith that destiny has plans for you. We must not surrender." She looked towards the dark forest beyond the village. "There may be a way," she whispered, "but it is perilous." If Efatu turned to her, taken aback. "What way?" Obama stated, "I have heard of a forbidden shrine by the sacred river within the forest. The spirits there are formidable. If someone is genuinely desperate, they can seek assistance." If Efatu appeared uneasy. "A forbidden shrine? What would the spirit demand in return?" Obioma inhaled deeply. "They may request a sacrifice," she replied softly. "But I am unafraid." Fear constricted Efatu's chest. He rose and confronted her. "Obioma, no, I cannot allow you to endanger yourself for my sake." Obioma stood resolute and unwavering. "I will do anything to ensure you become king. Those who ridicule you are unaware of your destiny. If the spirits require a sacrifice, I will offer whatever I can." If Efatu gently cupped her face, "You mean everything to me. What if something befalls you?" Obama enveloped her hands with his. "Nothing will occur. The spirit will protect us if our cause is righteous. You are destined to lead It. I sense it. Allow me to assist you in claiming that destiny." If Efatu gazed at his courageous wife and felt hope rekindle within him. He finally nodded. "If we proceed with this, we must exercise caution. No one must know." "Yes," Obioma concurred. "We shall venture out at night, alone. Trust me." On a moonless night, Efatu and Obama stealthily departed their hut and ventured into the forest. The towering trees swayed gently, and the night resonated with the songs of crickets. Ifu carried a torch to illuminate their path. Obama held a small basket filled with offerings, kola knots, a white hen, and sacred chalk, as tradition required. They journeyed for hours until they heard the gentle sound of the sacred river. A faint light glimmered through the trees, revealing the forbidden shrine. Upon their arrival, they noticed an elderly priest seated beside a carved stone altar. The priest's face was adorned with white chalk, and he wore a necklace made of animal bones. His gaze appeared strange and distant. "Who approaches the sacred river at this hour?" the priest inquired in a deep voice. Ifu and Obama knelt in reverence. "Only one. I am Efatu, and this is my wife, Obama." Efatu stated, "We come with humble hearts, seeking the assistance of the spirits." The priest scrutinized them and rose slowly. "This place is not for the inquisitive. Only those prepared to make a significant sacrifice may enter here." Obioma kept her head lowered. "We are prepared to make the sacrifice if the spirits will assist us. My husband is destined to be king of Ephite, but others obstruct his path. We implore the spirits to guide and favor him." The priest closed his eyes and shook a god rattle as he circled around them. The night air became still. Afiata felt a tingling sensation on his skin, as if unseen eyes were observing them from the shadows. Eventually, the priest halted and spoke. "The spirits hear you. They declare that destiny has been thwarted by the arrogance of men in your land." Efatu and Obama exchanged glances, their eyes filled with a glimmer of hope. The priest continued, "To rectify the course of destiny, a substantial sacrifice is required. One that even the most courageous would dread." Ada's mouth became parched. "What type of sacrifice?" The priest gestured towards the dark waters of the sacred river. "The river is teeming with spirits. It demands a life force to fulfill your wish." Obioma stood, holding Ada's hand. "Tell us what must be done," she urged. The priest fixed his gaze on Obama. "Woman, the spirits require you," he stated solemnly. "You must enter the sacred river and remain submerged for 7 market days." Ifu's eyes widened in fear. 7 market days equated to more than a week, and no one could possibly hold their breath for such an extended period and survive. That is simply not feasible. If he were to exclaim, "No human can endure being submerged for so many days. She will perish." The priest's expression remained unchanged. "That is the cost. Should your wife consent and manage to survive, the spirit will pave your way to the throne. If not, your aspirations will perish here." Ifu turned to Obioma in distress. "Obioma, this is overwhelming. I cannot allow you to proceed with this." Obioma's gaze was bright and unwavering. She grasped his hands tightly. "My love, this is the sole option. I am unafraid. The spirits wish to challenge me. I will demonstrate my bravery." A tear trickled down Ifata's cheek. "How can I continue to live if I lose you?" Obama offered a gentle smile. "You will not lose me. Have faith in me." She then turned back to the priest. "I will proceed," she declared resolutely. The priest nodded and gestured for Obama to approach the river. "Prepare yourself. Once you enter, you must not emerge until the designated time has elapsed. Do not be frightened, regardless of what you encounter beneath the surface." Ifata shivered as he held Obama's hand for the final time. She placed the basket of offerings on the altar and handed him the torch. Before entering the water, Obioma gazed into his eyes. "Promise me one thing," she said softly. "Anything," Ifata murmured. "When I return and you ascend to the throne, promise me that the child of my womb will inherit after you." If he were to envision the child they might have, a son, he hoped. In light of her actions, it was a minor promise. "I promise," he affirmed, "our child will inherit the throne after me. I swear it." Obama nodded. She stepped into the river. The frigid water rose from her ankles to her waist. She inhaled deeply and cast Ifatu a final glance. "I will return to you," Obama stated. "May the spirits safeguard you." Ifata responded, his voice trembling. Obama took a deep breath and then submerged beneath the water's surface. The river became tranquil and dark, as if nothing had transpired. The priest commenced his chanting. The waters of the river shimmered with a faint luminescence. Ifu collapsed to his knees at the riverbank. Obama was situated somewhere below, and he could only hope for her survival. Go home, the priest finally instructed. Return after 7 market days. If she is meant to live, she will rise again. He was reluctant to leave, but what more could he do? Ultimately, with tears in his eyes, he bowed to the priest and made his way back through the forest alone. When neighbors inquired about Obama's whereabouts, he forced a smile and lied, saying, "She went to visit her family. She will return soon." Each day of those 7 days felt like an eternity. He could hardly eat or sleep. Every night, he sneaked out to the edge of the forest and whispered desperate prayers toward the river, pleading with the spirits to spare his wife. Finally, the 7th day came to an end. Before dawn on the 8th day, Ifu ran through the forest back to the sacred river, his heart racing. The sun was just beginning to rise as he reached the riverbank. Initially, he saw nothing but the tranquil water glistening in the morning light. He stepped to the edge, trembling with fear and hope. "Oppa, please," he whispered. Suddenly, the water began to ripple. Bubbles surfaced, and slowly a figure emerged, breaking through the water. It was Obioma. She stood in the river, gasping for air. If cried out in joy and rushed into the shallow water to assist her. Obama was weak and trembling, yet alive. If wrapped her in his arms, exclaiming, "You are alive. Thank the spirits." Obama leaned against him, her voice soft. "I told you I would return." Tears of relief streamed down Ifata's face as he helped her out of the river. He covered her with his cloak to warm her. The old priest observed quietly from the trees, a small smile gracing his face. "You have proven yourself," the priest said to Obama. "The spirits are pleased. Destiny will unfold as it should." If bowed in gratitude, still holding Obama close. "Thank you," he whispered to the priest and the spirits. In the weeks that followed, news spread quietly through Eider about the events that transpired. Elders who had once doubted if began to reconsider their opinions. Rivals who had once ridiculed him fell silent, their hearts inexplicably filled with fear. Soon enough, the chiefs reached a consensus that he should be the next king. Some claimed it was the will of the ancestors. None dared to oppose him. At last, the day arrived when he was crowned king of Ait, with Obioma by his side as queen. The ceremony took place in front of the palace, a spacious hall made of clay, topped with a high thatched roof resembling a giant hut. People from all surrounding villages gathered to cheer for their new king. As the sun set that day, King Ifatu and Queen Obioma stood on the palace balcony, gazing at the jubilant crowd. Ifata squeezed Obioma's hand, reflecting on the challenges they had overcome to reach this pivotal moment. Obioma placed a hand on her belly and smiled at her husband, contemplating the child they hoped to have. She recalled the promise made by the ancestors. Their child would one day rule after him. She was convinced that their most difficult days were behind them. However, destiny is unpredictable. Their battle for the throne had concluded, yet their narrative was far from over. For the time being, they celebrated, oblivious to what fate had in store for them. King Ifatu and Queen Obioma soon realized that destiny had its own designs. Shortly after the coronation, Obioma found herself pregnant. The entire kingdom eagerly anticipated the birth. Remembering the queen's courage and the promise that the child she carried would one day reign, Obioma was filled with hope. She recalled the vow made by the sacred river, believing that the spirit would bless them with a strong son to fulfill that promise. Each night, she prayed for a boy who would grow to be a great king. The day of the birth arrived during the rainy season. Inside a warm hut behind the palace, Obioma cried out in labor. Wise women and midwives were present to assist her, while a feto waited anxiously outside. Rain drummed on the thatched roof for hours until, at last, a baby's cry pierced the air. A midwife emerged, smiling, and presented the tiny newborn wrapped in cloth to the feto. "Your Majesty, you have a child," she said gently, with joy in his heart, as he cradled the baby and gazed at her face illuminated by the light of an oil lamp. The infant emitted a strong cry and waved her tiny fists. "It's a girl," the midwife softly remarked. If's breath momentarily caught. A daughter. He had wished for a son, as tradition dictated that only a son could inherit the throne, but as he gazed at the baby's face, he was overwhelmed with pure love and pride. "A girl, my daughter," he whispered, smiling through tears. He carried the baby into the hut to introduce her to Obioma. Obioma lay exhausted on a mat. As he prepared to place the infant in her arms, she looked down at their baby girl. The child's eyes were large and bright, and she grasped Obioma's finger with surprising strength. "She's beautiful," Obioma said, smiling, though surprise and confusion flickered in her eyes. She had been so certain it would be a boy. She held the baby close, listening to her soft whimpers. If knelt beside his wife. "Our daughter is strong," he said with pride. "Listen to how loudly she cries." Obioma nodded, kissing the baby's forehead. Strong indeed. She already loved her baby deeply. Yet inside she pondered. A daughter? What of the promise I fought so hard for? They named the baby Princess Omasari. As the weeks went by, baby Omasari grew healthy and beautiful. She inherited her father's gentle smile and her mother's fiery eyes. The people of Ait celebrated the birth of the princess with singing and dancing. Kingu was proud and delighted, and Obioma too loved her baby fiercely. Still, in quiet moments, Obioma recalled her promise. "The child of my womb will rule after you." How could a girl fulfill that vow when their customs had never permitted a woman to rule? The elders anticipated a male heir. One evening, Obioma sat in the palace courtyard, rocking the baby to sleep. If joined her, noticing the concern etched on her face. "What troubles you, my queen?" he asked gently. Obioma sighed. "I was contemplating our daughter's future. If you were to smile at the slumbering infant, she is destined for a remarkable future. She is a princess. One day, she may wed a prince and live in happiness." Obioma gazed at Efatu and softly reminded him, "You assured me that our child would reign after you." Ifata's expression dimmed slightly. He recalled that promise vividly. "Indeed, I meant it. However, it is a girl. The elders would never accept a queen ruling alone." Obama's tone became firmer. "Then we shall alter their perceptions when the time arrives. We will nurture her to be strong and wise, so they recognize her worth. History can be reshaped if one is determined. We did not journey this far merely to forsake our promise to fate." Ifata gently touched Byam's hand and nodded. "We will do everything within our power. Perhaps customs will evolve, and if not, we will discover another means to fulfill our promise." Upon hearing this, Obama felt a sense of calm wash over her. She gazed at baby Omasari's serene face and murmured, "You will be a leader, my child, in one way or another." As the years unfolded, Princess Omasari blossomed into a vibrant, spirited girl. She dashed through the palace courtyard, laughter ringing out, her anklets chiming. She was astute, eagerly absorbing history and traditions. By the time she had experienced 10 rainy seasons, she could recite the lineage of kings and even practice with wooden swords. Obioma occasionally dressed Omasari in boys' trousers during training, instructing her on how to stand and speak with authority. The people of Ait cherish the princess. "She possesses Queen Obama's spirit," they would remark, observing Omasari ride a pony or engage in playful combat with palace guards. Kingu lavished affection on his daughter and supported her education in all areas, from diplomacy to fundamental combat skills. Yet, in hushed conversations, some elders expressed their concerns. "The king has no son," they whispered. "Who will ascend the throne after him?" Such murmurs never reached Omasari, but Obioma heard them and clenched her jaw in resolve. She was determined not to allow uncertainties regarding Omasari's value to take hold. While Omasari's early years flourished within the palace, another child of Kingu was maturing far away, one that few in Ait were aware of. Many years prior, before the rituals and the ascension to the throne, Ifaiatu had cherished another woman. This was a concealed chapter of his existence, shrouded in silence. In his youth, when he was merely an aspiring young man, he encountered a woman named Ikuto in a nearby village. Ikuto was gentle and compassionate. She did not hail from a prominent family and had no aspirations for titles or wealth. With her, Ifeatu found solace from the turmoil of court politics. He would visit her modest dwelling after his travels, bringing small tokens such as beads or fabric, and they would converse for hours beneath the moonlight. Their affection was uncomplicated and genuine. At that time, Ifeatu had not yet wed Obioma, although discussions among the elders regarding his potential marriage to a woman who could assist in his ascent were already underway. Yet, his heart was captivated by Ikuto's quiet resilience and delightful laughter. One day, that dream faced a challenge. Ikuto revealed to Ifeatu that she was expecting his child. Ifeatu was initially taken aback and filled with joy. He envisioned their baby, a child born from love. However, as the reality dawned on him, trepidation consumed him. He was not yet influential, and he had numerous adversaries. If news circulated that he had fathered a child out of wedlock with a commoner, his foes would undoubtedly exploit it against him, jeopardizing his aspirations of kingship. He met Ikuto under the shade of a mango tree near her residence to discuss the situation, his heart weighed down. Holding her hands, he spoke with anguish in his eyes. "This poses a risk for you and the baby. The elders, my rivals, if they discover this, I fear they will endanger you or thwart my rise." Ikuto's expression fell as she comprehended the gravity of their predicament. She was not from a powerful lineage. The elders would never recognize her as Ifeatu's wife or their child as an heir in those times. Tears welled in her eyes. "What shall we do?" she inquired softly. Ifeatu squeezed her hands. "You must find a safe place to go, at least for the time being, far from here where no one is familiar with us. I will ensure that you are looked after. This arrangement will only last until I can establish my position. Then, I promise to return for you and our child." A tear trickled down the cheek of the glow. She realized that staying would endanger them. However, parting from the man she loved was heart-wrenching. "If this is necessary to safeguard our baby, I will comply." She consented softly. "Promise me you will not forget us." Yatu embraced her tightly, his own eyes glistening. "I swear I will never forsake you or our child. I will provide support and visit as soon as it is safe." Within a week, plans were discreetly arranged. Akudon departed her village quietly at dawn, accompanied by a trusted friend of Ifeatu to a distant settlement beyond Ider's borders. Their farewell was hurried and sorrowful. She could only observe from afar as Io's cart vanished down the dusty road, carrying her unborn child and her heart along with it. In that remote village, Ikuto stayed with the family of her friend, who welcomed her warmly. Eventually, she gave birth to a baby boy. She named him Sapporo, a name that signifies honor and respect. She nurtured Sapporo with all the love she possessed. "Is my father alive?" Sapporo would inquire, lying on a mat beside his mother as crickets chirped outside. "Yes, my son," Ikuto would softly reply. "Your father is alive and well. He is a remarkable man. Why isn't he with us?" Sapporo gazed at her with innocent eyes. Ikuto gently stroked his head. "Your father's life is quite complex. He resides in a distant town called Ifit. He cannot be with us at this moment, but he cares for us from a distance." As Sapper matured, he began to connect the dots. News reached even the most secluded villages. Travelers spoke of the formidable King Ifeatu of Ifite and his courageous Queen Obioma. One evening, a wandering storyteller passed through, sharing tales of kingdoms. Sapporo listened intently as the man recounted King Ifeatu's coronation and Queen Obioma's sacrifice. Kudo observed her son's eyes widen with recognition upon hearing the name Ifeatu. That evening, Sapporo finally posed the question that Ikuto had anticipated for a long time. "Mother, is King Ifeatu my father?" Ikuto inhaled deeply and grasped Sapporo's hand. In the glow of his small oil lamp, she affirmed, "Yes, Kingu is your father." Sapporo's heart raced. He felt a mix of excitement and fear. "Does that make me a prince?" Ekoto gazed into her son's eyes. He was now old enough to comprehend some truths. By blood, yes, you are his son. But you must not disclose this to anyone. It is crucial to keep the secret. Sapporo frowned in confusion. Why must it be a secret? Ekoto explained softly. There are individuals who may wish to harm you if they learn you are the king's son. Some might perceive you as a threat or an adversary. Your father concealed us to safeguard us. Therefore, we must continue to live discreetly. Kingship is not a privilege. It can be perilous. Do you understand? Sapporo remained silent for a long moment. Eventually he nodded. I understand, Mama. I will not tell. From that day forward, Sapporo conducted himself with even greater humility. He toiled in the fields, fetched water, and learned hunting and tracking from local hunters. Like any village boy, he refrained from boasting or acting superior to others, yet internally, he held the knowledge of his true identity. Ikuto observed her son's growth with a mix of pride and sorrow. She was proud of his strength and kind heart, yet saddened that he could not openly acknowledge his father or live as a prince. Still, she reminded herself that this concealment was for his protection. Meanwhile, in Ite, Kingu frequently thought of Adu and Sapporo. Quietly, he dispatched food, clothing, and money through his trusted friend to ensure their well-being. He yearned to see his son but understood that bringing Sapporo back openly could lead to scandal or conflict, especially now that he had a queen and a princess in the palace. Thus, he kept this secret even from Ibama, hoping that one day the moment would be right to reunite his family. Thus, unbeknownst to one another, Princess Omiri was nurtured within the confines of the palace, while young Sapporo was raised in a remote village. One was immersed in royal education and expectations, whereas the other was instructed to lead a life of ordinariness and caution. Both shared the royal bloodline of Kingu and were cherished by different mothers. Nevertheless, fate had not overlooked the vow made long ago by the river. In quietude, it observed these two children. Their paths were distinct for the time being, yet one day their destinies would intertwine. For the truth concealed in darkness does not remain obscured indefinitely, particularly when fate never forgets a promise made to it. Years passed serenely in Ite. King Ifata governed with wisdom, and Queen Obama continued to be a formidable presence by his side. Princess Omasari blossomed into a beautiful young woman, possessing sharp intellect and a compassionate heart, adored by all. However, as time progressed, Kingu began to exhibit signs of aging. His hair was streaked with gray, and he found himself fatigued more easily after prolonged meetings. Although he was still held in high regard, murmurs began among the elders regarding who would succeed the king when his time arrived. According to tradition, the king's son was to inherit the throne. Yet, if Yoda had no recognized son, only Princess Umasari remained. Some elders proposed that the king appoint a successor from among their kin, or perhaps wed Omasari to a nobleman capable of ruling. Such discussions troubled Obama. One afternoon, the king convened a council meeting with his advisors and village elders in the Grand Council hut. The atmosphere was charged with tension. An elder, leaning on a walking stick, spoke candidly. Your Majesty, the ancestors demand clarity regarding the succession issue. We are apprehensive about the future of the throne. Ifata's expression turned grave. I acknowledge your concerns, he responded slowly. He was aware that this inquiry would arise, yet he still lacked a straightforward answer. Another elder cleared his throat. Pardon us, Kingu. We intend no disrespect, but you have only a daughter. Perhaps it is time to contemplate naming an heir from your relatives. Or the man hesitated, casting a glance toward Queen Obama, who was seated nearby alongside Princess Omasai. Obama narrowed her eyes. Or what, elder? Speak clearly. The elderly man shifted uneasily. Or perhaps consider taking another wife, one who could bear a son. At this, Omasari looked down with sadness, and Obama's temper flared. She rose to her feet, her voice slicing through the silence. My husband requires no additional wife. Have you forgotten the sacrifices I made for this throne? The spirits themselves bestowed this kingdom upon us. If a successor is necessary, then Princess Omasari is present. She possesses the blood of kings and the spirit for leadership. The elders murmured in unease. One gently shook his head. Queen Obama. Regardless of the princess's attributes, our customs have never permitted a woman to rule alone. The neighboring kingdoms would not acknowledge a queen as their sovereign. This could lead to conflict. Obioma wished to argue further, but he raised a hand gently to pacify her. Thank you, wise elders, for expressing your concerns. I assure you that I will make the most prudent decision for it when the time is right, he stated in a tone that concluded the discussion. The meeting came to an end, yet the issue lingered heavily on Kingata's heart. He recognized that the elders were correct about one matter. The ancestors and the populace anticipated a male heir, and he also recalled vividly that he had secretly fathered a son, Saponu, many years ago. Later that night, Ifeata sought solitude in his private chamber, illuminated only by a small flickering oil lamp. Opium had retired to bed, upset by the council's remarks, and Princess Omasai was in her own quarters. The king found himself alone with his reflections. He retrieved a wooden carving from a locked box. It was a simple toy representation of a lion that he had crafted long ago. He had intended it as a gift for the child Akudo was expecting before fear compelled him to send her away. He ran his thumb over the worn paint on the lion's mane and felt a surge of guilt. Quietly, a figure entered the chamber. It was Inkem, the longtime friend who had assisted Akudo in leaving years prior and had served as a messenger between Akudo and others throughout this period. You summon me, my king? In asked in a subdued tone. Yes, Sin. I require your loyalty, once again. Is there anything I can do for you, your majesty? In bowed respectfully. If you are to exhale, are you aware of what the council discussed today? They are pressing me for an heir. I can no longer postpone this matter. It is time. His eyes brightened with comprehension. You mean, yes, if you are to confirm it. It is time to bring Akudo and Sopa here to fit in quietly and cautiously. I wish to see my son. I want to prepare him to be my successor. Nodded resolutely. He had been sending letters and gifts to Ecuador for many years, albeit infrequently and always in secrecy. He was aware of her whereabouts. I will depart at first light, my king. Proceed with discretion if you feel compelled. Take a small group of men you trust. I do not want any rumors circulating. Inform Ecuador that I wish to see her and my son. Make arrangements for their safe and discreet travel. Anka placed a fist against his chest in salute. It shall be done. Azan departed swiftly into the night. Feeling both anxious and hopeful, he murmured to himself, The time has come, my son. I will rectify things. A week later, just after sunset, a covered wagon arrived at the outskirts of It. Inkem had returned. Inside the wagon sat Akudo, who had journeyed for days under the protection of the king's trusted men. They were dressed simply to avoid drawing attention, but Supru's eyes widened as he gazed at the distant lights of the palace and the bustling life of the capital town. He had heard tales of Ite's magnificence, but had never witnessed it with his own eyes until this moment. Guided them to a secluded house on the edge of the palace grounds, a guest quarter frequently utilized for significant visitors seeking privacy. King Gafayatu had arranged to meet them there under the cover of darkness to avoid the risk of being seen escorting them into the main palace halls. Inside the lamp house, Ecuador paced anxiously, adjusting her simple wrap dress and drying her palms. Years of humble living had rendered her unaccustomed to luxury. Although the guest house was modest by palace standards, it felt magnificent to her. Sapur stood beside his mother, calm yet vigilant, his hand resting reassuringly on her shoulder. Finally, the door was gently pushed open, and King Ifeata entered. Ekoto gasped softly. So many years had passed. Ifu appeared older now, with a touch of gray in his hair and lines of care etched on his face, but to Akudo's eyes, he remained the man she had loved. She immediately knelt, and Subaru followed suit out of respect, bowing his head. My king, Akudo said quietly. If you are to hurry forward, Akudo, please rise, he replied, his voice heavy with emotion. He gently assisted her to her feet. For a brief moment, They simply gazed at one another. So many words remained unspoken. Ekoto's eyes shimmered with tears, yet she smiled bravely. "It's been a long time, hasn't it?" "It has," he whispered. "Too long. I apologize." He carefully took her hands in his. "I am sorry for everything. For sending you away, for leaving you alone with our child. You cannot imagine how often I thought of both of you." Ekoto nodded, wiping away a tear. "I understand you did what you believed was necessary to protect us." Meanwhile, Supru remained respectfully silent, still kneeling, as he turned to look at the young man properly for the first time. In the warm light of the lamp, he observed a tall, strong youth, likely in his early 20s. Supru possessed Ifata's own eyes and a hint of his mother's features. The resemblance filled the king's heart with pride. "Rise, my son," Ifata said softly. Supru looked up, meeting his father's gaze. It was a profound moment, father and son seeing each other clearly, perhaps for the first time. Slowly, Supru stood up. Unsure of the proper etiquette, he formally stated, "Your Majesty, I am honored to meet you." However, Ifata stepped forward, breaking royal decorum, and embraced Supru tightly. "My son," he said, his voice quivering. "Call me father." So's eyes widened slightly at the embrace, then he closed them and returned the hug, a single tear rolling down his cheek. "Father," he whispered. Within that simple word lay a blend of joy, relief, and yearning that had accumulated over years of wondering and dreaming about this moment. After a prolonged moment, Effa stepped back, keeping his hands on Sapuru's shoulders, as if to reassure himself that this was indeed real. "Let me look at you," he said, smiling. "You have grown into a fine young man, so much like," he chuckled, "so much like me when I was your age." I laughed softly, breaking the emotional tension. He is humble and steady, much like his father could be in quiet moments. Yada cast a grateful glance at Ekoto. He then gestured for everyone to take a seat. They settled onto low-cushioned stools around a small table, waited just outside to grant them privacy. For a while, they conversed quietly. If he had to inquire of Sapporo about his life, what he had learned, and what skills he had acquired, Suburu spoke with politeness and modesty, detailing how he learned to hunt, farm, and fight with a spear from local hunters. If you were to notice the calm discipline in the young man's voice, you would nod approvingly, acknowledging that he has had a good upbringing. "Your mother taught you well?" Io said with pride. After some time, the king cleared his throat and spoke with seriousness. "Io Sapporo, I have brought you here because I intend to rectify a wrong. I should never have kept my son in the shadows. It is a time when our kingdom needs a clear successor. I want Sapporo to assume that role." Sapporo exchanged a glance with his mother. His expression remained composed, but internally his heart raced at the prospect. "Father, if that is your wish, I will comply," Sapporo replied. He had been raised to be humble, yet he understood that this could be his destiny calling. Ikuto placed her hand over Sapporo's. "I am at your service, your majesty, but how will this be accomplished?" She could not help but feel concern for Obioma. Ikuto was aware of Obioma's strength and temperament through various rumors and correspondence. If he sighed thoughtfully, he remarked, "I will refrain from making a public announcement for the time being. I am concerned about Obama's reaction. She has long held the belief that our daughter would follow in my footsteps, and I owe her a great deal." He cast his gaze downward, a mixture of shame and inner turmoil evident in his eyes. I nodded in comprehension. She did not wish to create any disturbances, yet Sapporo's existence had been influenced by that ancient promise made to Obioma. I intended to introduce Sapporo to the palace discreetly, perhaps initially as an attendant or a trainee guard. I will dedicate time to instructing him in our laws and court customs. When the appropriate moment arrives, I will disclose his identity as my son and the heir. By that time, I hope to have gained Obama's acceptance, or, at the very least, her understanding. Ifata reached out and gently touched Ikuto's arm. "I also plan to ensure your well-being, Ikuto. You may reside in the palace if you choose, or in any residence within the city. I would no longer keep you hidden. You are Subaru's mother, and you deserve respect." Io smiled gently, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. Thank you, for I have lived in silence for so long. Honor is not my pursuit. My only desire is for Saporu's safety and happiness. If I looked at Saporu, I understand this is a significant transition for you, my son. One day, if all unfolds favorably, you will be proclaimed as the Prince of Ait and will bear substantial responsibilities. Use these days to acclimate. I will support you at every turn. So took a deep breath and lowered his head. I will make you proud, father. I have awaited and prepared for a long time to meet you. I will absorb whatever knowledge you wish to impart. Ifu experienced a wave of pride and affection. Indeed, blood does not deceive. Saporu exhibited the poise and dignity befitting a king's son. That evening, Kinga lingered late, conversing with Ikuto and Saporu. He felt happier than he had in years, optimistic that he could finally bring his concealed family into the open and secure the future of his kingdom. As they discussed their plans, none of them noticed a shadow lurking outside the window or the faint sound of a retreating footstep in the darkness. However, there was indeed someone lurking in the vicinity that night, a curious servant or guard who had witnessed the king retire to the guest house and caught a glimpse of the visitors within. Whispers travel swiftly in a palace, and within a day or two, those whispers would reach the wrong ears. For the moment, Iphiatus slept with a lighter heart, believing that he could finally reconcile honor, love, and duty. He remained unaware that faith was already stirring, and that the careful time he desired for explaining everything would never materialize. True to the fears that linger in the shadows, the secret of King Iatu's concealed son could not be kept hidden for long. A whisper here, a stray comment there, and soon Queen Obama was informed of troubling news. Servants gossip when doors appear closed, and someone mentioned witnessing a strange woman and young man meeting with the king in private. One evening in the royal chambers, Obioma confronted Ifatu. The princess was away in the library, leaving them alone. Obioma's eyes blazed with anger as she firmly shut the door behind her. I have heard a rumor, Ifu, she began, her voice dangerously calm. They say you have been secretly meeting with a woman and a young man. Who are they? Ifata's heart skipped a beat. He had hoped to gently introduce Tapiru to Obama when the time was right. He rose from his seat, attempting to keep his voice steady. Obama, I was going to tell you. Obama stepped closer, fists clenched at her sides. Tell me what? That you brought some stranger into our home without my knowledge? That you sneak behind my back after everything I've done for you? He is not a stranger, Ifu said, reaching out a hand as if to comfort her. He sits down. Let me explain. Obioma did not sit. Explain quickly. Then Kinga took a deep breath. The woman, he said, is Ikuto. Obioma's eyes narrowed. The name was vaguely familiar from long ago. Ikuto. Before marriage, Obioma had heard whispers of Ayata's youthful romance, but believed it had ended when they married. Her stomach clenched. Yes, Ayata replied softly. Someone I cherished in my youth. Obioma, before you pass judgment, please comprehend. Obama severed ties with him, her voice escalating, and the young man accompanying her. Who is he? Afatu's voice nearly faltered. He recognized this was the pivotal moment. His name is Saporu. He hesitated for just a moment. My son. The words resonated in the atmosphere like a thunderclap. Obama recoiled as if struck. Her complexion turned pale, then contorted with pain and fury. Your son, she nearly shouted. All these years, you had a son, and you concealed him from me, from our people. If you had to try to see her, I did it to safeguard everyone. It was long before you and I ascended the throne. I was fearful. Yet Obama was beyond placation. She began to pace like a caged lioness. I sacrificed everything for you if you had to. I ventured into death's river for you. I bore you a child, our daughter, under the promise that she would reign. And now you dare introduce another child, a bastard son, to usurp what is hers. He is not here to take anything from Umasari, he insisted urgently. Please, Obama, listen. So is my blood, and it was unjust to keep him concealed. The elders were demanding a successor. You know they will not accept Omasari. I only wish to secure the kingdom and uphold my promise to the ancestors. Ancestors? Obama spat, her voice laced with disdain. And what of the vow you made to me? By that sacred river, you swore our child would inherit your throne. Was that a falsehood? His shoulders sagged. I have not forgotten my promise. I will discover a way to honor it, but I must also do what is just. Stapu merits acknowledgement. He is a commendable young man. Perhaps he could be king, and Umasari could still wield significant power, even be referred to as Queen Mother or something similar. To whom? To that woman, Ikuto's son? Obama shouted, unable to restrain herself. Never. I will never permit it. She trembled with rage. In her mind, she envisioned all her sacrifices being undone. Her daughter cast aside. Few approached her, attempting to grasp her hand. My queen, I implore you. She forcefully withdrew her hand. Her voice lowered to a chilling, icy tone. You have betrayed me, Ifayatu. You introduced this secret into our home right under my nose, and you aim to make a fool of both me and our daughter. That was never my intention, if you protested. I intended to manage it with care. I wanted to inform you in the appropriate manner. Manage it with care, Obama retorted with a bitter laugh. Is that what you refer to as sneaking around with that woman? And plotting to place her son on the throne that is meant for Omasai? If stiffened slightly, striving to remain composed. I requested time, Obama. Time to address this situation. Sapporo could be a suitable choice for Omasai. She possesses capability, yet the kingdom may not accept her. Perhaps we can devise a solution where they share responsibilities. Or marry her to Sapporo when they are older. Obama's eyes widened in disgust and disbelief. Marry her as well? Do you even hear yourself? You would have Omasari wed this unknown man who is her half-brother merely to appease tradition. No, that is not what I intended. If quickly interjected, realizing his error, I am merely attempting to find a solution. However, Obioma could no longer endure it. She felt a profound sense of betrayal piercing her like a knife. Her entire life, since meeting Ifayatu, had been molded by her vow and sacrificed for his fate. Now it appeared to her that Ifayatu was prepared to abandon all of that for a secret son. Her vision blurred with tears of fury. This is how you repay me, she murmured, her voice trembling. After all I have done, this is how destiny rewards me. If reached out once more, but she stepped back. Obama, I implore you, trust me, I will rectify this. Suburu and Omasai. But Obioma had already turned and was striding towards the door. She paused only to cast a final fierce proclamation over her shoulder. You rectify nothing. I will safeguard my child's birthright myself, regardless of what I must do. With that, she stormed out, leaving Kinga standing alone, his heart laden with dread. He had never witnessed Obama's face displaying such rage and sorrow. He was apprehensive about her potential actions, yet he hoped she would calm down and regain her composure in due time. Obioma did not calm down. That evening, restless and boiling with anger, she roamed her quarters. She dismissed her maidens and guards, asserting that she required solitude. In the stillness, she contemplated the sacred river, reflecting on the cold darkness she had endured. She envisioned her daughter's radiant face and feared it would fade if Sapporo assumed her position. Her thoughts were tumultuous, akin to a stormy ocean. Ifayatu's cautionary words resonated in her mind. Handle it carefully. It felt as though he was scheming to surreptitiously usurp Omasari's claim. Obama's faith was irrevocably broken. She was resolute that if he favored this son over her and Omasari, and if the king would not uphold the vow, she would take matters into her own hands. Approaching midnight, Obioma ignited a small oil lamp and retrieved a wooden chest from beneath her bed. Within it lay tokens and relics from her past interactions with the spirits. Bones, herbs, and a smooth black stone from the bank of the sacred river were stored there. She had wished never to resort to these items again, but desperation gnawed at her. I will not allow them to take what belongs to me, she declared fiercely to the vacant room. The following day, Queen Obioma maintained a composed demeanor in public. She even shared breakfast with Princess Omasari, who perceived nothing amiss aside from her mother's unusual silence. Kingu also attempted to fulfill his responsibilities as usual, although he was eager to converse with Obioma when she was in a calmer state. However, Obioma had already initiated a sinister scheme through a clandestine network of devoted servants and some old acquaintances from her lineage. She dispatched messages to engage assassins. She selected individuals from outside It, mercenaries who would remain unrecognized. Her directives were precise and unyielding. A woman named Ikuto and her son Sapporo were to be discreetly eliminated that very night. Late that evening, two shadowy figures infiltrated the guest house compound where Ikuto and Subaru were residing. They moved with the silent elegance characteristic of hunters. Inside, Ikuto was getting ready to sleep. However, Sapporo remained awake, sensing an unusual presence in the air. His years of cautious living had honed his instincts. Suddenly, a faint sound broke the silence. It was the creak of a loose floorboard near the back door. Consequently, Puru immediately stood up and reached for a short knife that the king's men had provided him for protection. Before he could proceed to investigate, a gentle knock echoed at the front door. Otto, suspecting it might be a messenger, gestured for Subaru to remain back and approach the door. "Who is it?" she inquired softly. From outside, a low voice responded. "A message from the king." This made Puru's instincts alert him that something was amiss. He swiftly moved to his mother's side. "Don't open it," he whispered urgently. But it was too late. The assassin struck from two directions. One burst through the front door, which was unbolted as Otto had reached for it, while another leaped through a back window after quietly prying it open. The first assassin lunged at Ikuto, a dagger glinting ominously in his hand. Before he could land a blow, Soru reacted with lightning-fast reflexes. He pushed his mother aside, seizing a wooden stool and smashing it against the attacker. The impact knocked the man off balance. The second intruder from the back charged towards Soru with a sword. So ducked under the slash, the blade barely grazing his shoulder. He winced but did not cry out. Unarmed, except for his small knife, Subaru realized they were at a severe disadvantage. "Run, mother," Sora shouted, blocking another strike with the broken stool. Ikuto, though filled with fear, refused to abandon her son. She seized a clay water jug and hurled it at the second attacker, striking him in the chest and buying Soru a brief moment. The first assassin regained his footing and charged once more. So finally managed to draw his knife from his belt. He confronted the man head-on, deflecting the dagger with his knife. The two engaged in a struggle, but Sora's months of training with hunters had made him formidable. He twisted the wrist of the attacker, causing him to howl, and swiftly dropped the dagger. "Mother!" Thus, Puru shouted to his mother, forcefully pushing the disarmed man away. He noticed more dark figures moving outside, likely additional accomplices lurking. They needed to escape immediately, or not at all. Ekoto swung the front door wide open, while Sapporo kicked a small table to trip the second assassin who attempted to follow them. Together, mother and son burst into the night and ran. Their bare feet struck the dead path with force. One assassin stumbled out after them, muttering curses under his breath. However, in the darkness, and I knew how to conceal ourselves. They slipped into a narrow alley between huts, then into another yard, continuing their flight. Years of living cautiously had taught them to vanish when necessary. Eventually, after a heart-pounding hour of darting through back paths, Subaru guided his mother beyond the town's outskirts. Before dawn, they had crossed the shallow ford of a river at the boundary, entering the territory of a neighboring village. Only then did they pause to catch their breath by a grove of trees. Ekoto was trembling with fear and fatigue. So, bleeding from a shallow cut on his shoulder, clenched his fists in anger and sorrow. He was aware of who must have sent those men. There was only one individual who would desire their demise: Queen Obioma. As the sun rose over the horizon, and Ikuro remained hidden among the tall grasses, contemplating their next course of action. They could not return to the palace now. Obama's influence was too extensive. So's eyes burned with unshed tears, refusing to fall, both from the anguish of betrayal and concern for his father and sister in that perilous palace. Meanwhile, back in night, chaos was unfolding. Before dawn, a frantic guard discovered the aftermath at the guest house. The doors were flung open, furniture was overturned, blood stained the floor, yet no Oru was found. One injured assassin lay in mourning within, having been accidentally left behind, and he took his final breath before he could be interrogated. The guards triggered an alarm. King Ayatu was roused with urgent news that his guests had been attacked and were unaccounted for. With his heart racing, Efatu immediately suspected who was responsible. "Oba, what have you done?" he murmured to himself in dread. He commanded an immediate search for Akudo and Sapporo. However, even as soldiers readied themselves to scout, another calamity struck Kinga's residence that fateful morning. Despite being shaken by the events of the night, Ifeatu had to attend a shadow diplomatic feast at midday with visiting nobles from allied territories. He was determined to keep the unrest concealed and hoped that Akudo and Sapporo might still be found alive if Yatu attended the feast hall. Queen Obioma was conspicuously absent, citing illness to avoid confronting her husband. Princess Omasari was not informed of the attack. She merely observed that her father appeared very troubled during the feast. Throughout the banquet, as drums played softly and servers presented platters of food, Kinga scarcely touched his meal. His thoughts were consumed with the search for his son. He raised a drinking horn filled with palm wine, intending to take a soothing sip. Suddenly, a sharp pain gripped his stomach. Ifeatu coughed, dropping the horn. The guests looked on in alarm as the king staggered to his feet, confusion and agony twisting his features. "Father," Siri exclaimed, rushing to his side. He attempted to speak, but only a strangled gasp escaped his lips. Foam was forming at the corners of his mouth. His vision blurred. Omasari supported him, calling for assistance. Within moments, King Ifeatu collapsed onto the floor. His loyal attendant and Omasari leaned over him, but his eyes were glazing over. The only whisper that escaped him as darkness enveloped him was his daughter's name. "Oh, Omasari." And perhaps a final regretful thought of Sapporo that never materialized into words. Within minutes, Kingu was dead, poisoned at his own feast. Panic and grief erupted in the hall. Omasari's cries resonated as she clung to her father's lifeless form. Servants scattered in all directions. Some guests discreetly departed, apprehensive of the unfolding scheme. Amidst the chaos, few noticed Queen Obama lurking in the shadows of a doorway at the hall's far end, her expression inscrutable. She observed as they proclaimed the king's drink had been poisoned. She witnessed the palace descend into mourning and disorder. In her tightly clenched hand, she grasped the smooth black river stone from her collection of relics, a talisman she believed would shield her from the poison she had surreptitiously added to the cup via a servant. By nightfall, the kingdom of Ephite was bereft of its king. The throne remained vacant, and a heavy atmosphere of grief and fear enveloped the air. In the subsequent days, such gatherings resumed without any sign of Akudo or Sapporo. Many presumed they had been slain and perhaps their remains concealed, although some speculated they might have escaped. With the king deceased and no trace of the secret prince discovered, a palpable tension gripped the realm. The elders were perplexed and uneasy, yet Queen Obama acted decisively. She donned black mourning attire and summoned a council before the assembled chiefs and elders. Obioma spoke with conviction. "My husband, our esteemed king, has been abruptly taken from us." Her voice conveyed both grief and a resolute tone. "Our land must not descend into chaos. Until we locate the king's son, Sapporo, who is currently missing, I shall assume the throne in trust." Some elders exchanged weary looks. One elder interjected. "Your Majesty, King Ifeatu only recently disclosed the existence of the son to us through such an announcement. We are uncertain of his survival." Obama raised a hand. "Regardless of his status, we must adhere to the king's final wishes." He desired for the boy to be located. Until there is evidence of his fate, I will serve as regent and safeguard the kingdom. Heitan permitted no dissent. In reality, Obioma was ensuring that Sapporo would never come back. In secret, she continued to search for him to complete what the assassins had failed to accomplish. However, in public, she presented herself as dutifully holding power temporarily. The elders, confronted with an unexpected crisis and perhaps intimidated by Obioma's well-known spiritual prowess, mostly nodded in agreement or remained silent. A few who cherished tradition murmured that it was highly unusual for a woman to lead, even as regent. Obioma directed an icy glare at those individuals and reminded them, I have stood beside King Afayate during every significant decision. Who better to ensure stability now? Or would you rather have an empty throne and chaos? At that moment, no one dared to oppose her father. Thus, Queen Obioma effectively took control of the throne of Ait under the pretense of safeguarding it for the missing prince. Far away, Sapporo learned of his father's demise and his stepmother's usurpation of the throne through the gossip of a traveling merchant. The news struck him like a dagger to the heart. Hidden in a far-off land with Ikuto, he wept bitterly for Kingu. He also came to the realization that Obioma had triumphed for the time being. She held dominion over the kingdom and had portrayed him as a fugitive or potentially a villain lurking in the shadows. Something within Sapporo perished that night. Clutching his mother closely, he quietly vowed in the darkness, one day, I will return. I will rectify this situation. For the time being, mother and son remained concealed in distant lands. Meanwhile, in Ait, Queen Obioma's reign of terror was about to commence. Queen Obioma's rule over Ait began in fear and darkness. With Kingu gone, the balance of power shifted entirely into her control. Initially, she feigned being a caretaker of the throne. However, it soon became evident that Obioma had effectively crowned herself queen in all but title. She began to dismantle the customs that had governed Ida for generations. The Council of Elders, which had once advised the king, found that their counsel held no significance. If an elder criticized Obama's decisions, she would address them with a piercing gaze or a sharp remark that left them quaking. Some elders who opposed her too openly were ousted from their roles under fabricated accusations or simply vanished from the council chambers. Fear enveloped the royal court like a dense fog. Servants learned to smile on cue and laugh when the queen laughed, even if her humor was harsh. The palace that once resonated with authentic music and conversation now reverberated with an uncomfortable silence, interrupted only by forced laughter during Queen Obama's banquets. One of the most startling transformations occurred when Obama ridiculed tradition by taking men as her symbolic spouses. In a grand assembly, she proclaimed that since kings took multiple wives to demonstrate their authority, she, as the sovereign, would take husbands to showcase hers. The elders and courtiers exchanged perplexed looks, uncertain of her seriousness. However, Obioma clapped her hands, and two young influential male courtiers were presented by guards. These men were compelled to kneel before her. Obama adorned their heads with ceremonial women's headscarves and declared with a chilling smile, "Behold my wives." Many in the audience emitted hesitant chuckles, perceiving it as an odd gesture. Yet, Obama's demeanor was deadly serious. By doing this, she humiliated those men and conveyed a message. She was above all conventions, and no man in the kingdom was her equal. The two courtiers blushed with embarrassment, but dared not object. Everyone applauded out of fear of the consequences of silence. The princess observed this spectacle from a corner of the hall, her heart weighed down. She barely recognized her mother any longer. Since her father's passing, Omasari had witnessed Obioma transform from a firm, affectionate parent into a ruler consumed by rage and paranoia. Obioma still cared for Umasari in her own manner, ensuring she had fine garments and sustenance, but she had grown increasingly possessive and controlling. In private, Obama frequently reminded Omasari, "Everything I do for you. I will not allow anyone to take your destiny away." Omasai would nod silently, yet internally, she felt torn. She deeply missed her father and harbored the fear that now permeated every corner of the palace. She overheard servants murmuring that Queen Obama might have been involved in the king's demise and the prince's disappearance. These rumors filled her with a sense of sadness and uncertainty, but she tried to dismiss them. She did not wish to believe her mother was capable of such atrocities. However, as the weeks passed, it became increasingly difficult for Masari to overlook the signs of her mother's oppression. She noticed how people shunned Obama's gaze and how even her father's most courageous advisors spoke in hushed tones in the Queen's presence. The once joyful atmosphere of the court had dissipated. Obioma enforced new regulations in the kingdom, imposing harsher taxes that caused the common folk to groan under the weight and curfews at night to prevent gatherings from occurring without her awareness. She dispatched spies into the markets and villages to eavesdrop for any mention of Skuru or any dissent regarding her reign. If anyone was caught questioning the queen, they could vanish overnight or face public punishment as a warning. One afternoon, Omasari strolled through the palace courtyard where she had once played freely as a child. Now, guards were stationed everywhere, their eyes tracking her every movement, reporting back to Obioma on even the most trivial actions of the princess. Omasai felt like a captive in her own home. She approached the gates that led to the city, but a guard blocked her path. "Princess, Her Majesty has commanded that you do not leave the palace without permission," one guard said apologetically. Omasari sighed. "I merely wish to go to the temple to place flowers for my father." The guard shook his head. "I regret to inform you, Princess. We can deliver the flowers on your behalf, but you must remain inside." Feeling frustrated and isolated, Omasari presented the bouquet of white lilies she had gathered in memory of her father. As the guard accepted them, she turned away, tears welling in her eyes. She felt utterly powerless. Inside the palace, Omasari encountered one of her former nursemaids, a compassionate woman named Indidai, and confided in her softly. In a quiet corner, Omasari whispered, "Everything has changed, Didi. I am frightened by what Mother is doing. The people now look at us with fear instead of love." Indidai, who had witnessed many years and had cared for Omasari since her birth, gently took the princess's hand. "My dear, your mother has endured much suffering. Sometimes pain and anger can darken a heart. But remember, not everyone has turned against you. The common folk still cherish you for your kind spirit. They only fear the queen's wrath." Omasari wiped away a tear. "What can I do? I feel so utterly useless. Father always listened to the elders and cared for the people. Now, no one dares to speak the truth. If I attempt to talk to Mother?" She trailed off, recalling the last time she had tentatively questioned Obama's actions. A week prior, Omasari had attempted to reason gently with her mother. She had said, "Mama, perhaps we should reduce the tax burden on the farmers. They are expressing concerns that it is too high." Immediately, Obama's expression darkened. "Who has been informing you of these matters?" she demanded. "I overheard some villagers when I visited the courtyard," Omasari admitted. Obama had stood up suddenly, her eyes flashing. "You will not discuss state affairs that you do not comprehend. Those villagers are ungrateful. Everything I do is to fortify this kingdom and secure your future. Do not allow their complaints to fill your mind with doubt." When Omasari attempted to object, Obioma's voice rose in an unusual shout. "Enough. You are a princess. Conduct yourself as one and trust my decisions." That was the first moment Omasari had genuinely felt fear towards her mother. Witnessing the fierce glare aimed at her, she lowered her head and softly said, "Yes, Mother," thereby concluding the discussion. Subsequently, Obioma appointed 2 additional maidservants to remain close to Omasai at all times, both for her protection and for surveillance purposes. Reflecting on this, Omasai remarked to Indidai, "Whenever I attempt to speak, she silences me. She is only interested in hearing praise and agreement. I fear that Effet is in distress, and I am powerless to assist." Indeed, he glanced around to confirm that no one else was eavesdropping, then spoke in a hushed tone, "Princess, dark periods do not endure indefinitely. Engage in whatever good you can, even if it is in minor ways. Occasionally, your smile towards the servants or acts of kindness can instill hope. The people regard you as a beacon within the palace, despite the queen's overshadowing presence. Omaesai embraced her elderly nursemaid.
Thank you, Indidai.
I shall make an effort. Under the oppressive regime of Obioma, the small acts of kindness from Princess Omaesai truly became a gentle comfort for those around her. She would discreetly send surplus food from her own plate to the kitchen staff or speak kindly to a guard reprimanded by the queen. However, these minor gestures did not go unnoticed by Obioma. Be cautious not to undermine my authority, Omasari. Obioma cautioned one evening when she observed Siri giving her uneaten dessert to a servant boy. If the staff perceive you as their savior, they may cease to fear me, and it is fear that currently ensures their loyalty. Omaesai's heart tightened. Was loyalty now only achievable through fear? She recalled how the people had cherished her father and followed him out of respect rather than terror. In her thoughts, she began to ponder whether her mother's approach was genuinely safeguarding the kingdom or gradually eroding it from within. Beyond the palace walls, the citizens of It were indeed enduring hardship. With increased taxes and stringent regulations, life became increasingly difficult. Markets closed early due to curfews. Celebrations for festivals were either cancelled or conducted in secrecy to evade the queen's spies. Some families quietly departed the kingdom in search of refuge in neighboring territories to escape Obioma's reign. The villagers began to express their concerns that the kingdom was decaying from within, as crops failed and misfortune appeared to increase, whether due to natural events or possibly the repercussions of a broken vow. Some murmured that the ancestors were displeased. The elderly women in their huts would remark that the throne was tainted with deceit and blood. Within the palace, Obioma surrounded herself with a select group of loyal advisors, or rather, individuals too fearful to show disloyalty. These were the same men she had previously humiliated or intimidated. They complied with her every directive. Each night, Obioma would either consult with a diver or spend time alone in the shrine room, burning herbs and murmuring incantations to ensure the spirit remained on her side. Her fixation on maintaining power and eliminating any potential threats consumed her. Amidst all this, Princess Omari endeavored to survive and preserve some semblance of goodness. She dedicated hours in solitude to her father's old study, poring over his journals and letters to feel a connection to him. She would visit the small shrine within the palace to pray for guidance, beseeching the ancestors and her father's spirit to lead her mother back to kindness or to provide direction for herself or Masari. However, the ancestors appeared to remain silent, and Queen Obi's tyranny persisted unabated. One night, Omasari experienced a dream. She beheld the sacred river, where her mother stood knee-deep. Yet, the waters surrounding Obioma were crimson like blood. In the dream, Omasari attempted to call out to her mother, but Obioma did not hear her. Instead, a figure emerged from the shadowy trees along the riverbank, a young man with a serene, sorrowful expression. Omasari did not recognize him in the dream, yet somehow felt a sense of familiarity. The young man gestured towards Queen Obioma and then towards the distant horizon where dawn was beginning to break. Omaesai awoke abruptly, her heart racing. She sensed that an omen had brushed against her consciousness, yet she could not fully interpret it. She speculated that the young man might have been Prince Sakuru, although she had never encountered him. Perhaps it was simply her imagination, fueled by the numerous discussions regarding the missing heir. Nevertheless, the dream left her with an unusual blend of fear and hope. Dawn was approaching in the dream. Perhaps it indicated that these dark times in It would eventually come to an end. For the moment, the princess chose to keep her dream to herself and continued her days with as much obedience as she could muster. She understood that a single misstep could incite her mother's fury, which could pose a threat not only to her but also to anyone she held dear within the palace. Thus, Omasari learned to don a facade, much like everyone else. In public, she smiled and concurred. In private, She silently grieved for the joyful life they once enjoyed and prayed for a more promising future. Under Queen Obama's strict control, the kingdom existed in a state of tense silence. Yet beneath that silence, resentment festered like dry grass, awaiting a spark. Although Obama was convinced she had eliminated all threats, far beyond her awareness, Sakura remained alive, growing stronger in the shadows and preparing for the day when fate would restore balance. Saparu and his mother Ikudu traveled far for might, journeying by night and resting during the day to evade anyone who might recognize them. They traversed rivers and navigated through dense forests, moving further away until they arrived in a land where no one was familiar with their identities. It was a region characterized by rolling hills and thick woods, where small villages were dispersed and life was uncomplicated. In a modest village at the edge of a vast forest, Ikodu and Sapporo found sanctuary. The villagers were humble farmers and adept hunters. They welcomed the weary mother and son with minimal inquiries, assuming them to be ordinary travelers escaping some form of trouble. So, he allowed the villagers to believe that he and his mother were fleeing from a bandit raid or a cruel master. It was simpler than disclosing the truth. They established a tranquil existence there. So Peru diligently worked alongside the villagers, assisting in repairing fences, cultivating fields, and fetching water. His upbringing and modesty served him well. He never bragged about his royal lineage. To the villagers, he was merely a strong and courteous young man eager to assist. However, Subaru bore a heavy burden in his heart. At night, as he lay on a straw mat in the small hut assigned to them, thoughts of King Efiatu, his father, would flood his mind, causing tears to escape his eyes. He had only recently discovered his father, only to lose him to violence and betrayal. At times, fury would surge within him at the mere thought of Queen Obama, who had dispatched assassins after him and likely played a role in his father's demise. On those nights, he would clench his fists until his nails pierced his palms. Ikadu perceived the anger and grief in her son. One evening, as the crickets chirped outside their hut, she spoke to him. "My son, I see the tempest in your eyes. I feel it as well. But we must not allow anger to consume us. It is not yet the time to act. We must exercise patience." Thus, View grappled with this notion. How can I be patient? Mother, my father is gone. My sister remains in Omeisai with that woman. The kingdom that ought to be my home is shrouded in a dreadful shadow. How can I remain idle? Ekadu placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Doing nothing for the moment does not equate to doing nothing forever. You survived for a purpose. Perhaps the spirit preserved you so that one day you can rectify the situation. But you are not yet prepared. We are safe here, yet Obioma's influence is extensive. If you hasten back without adequate preparation, it could spell our doom, and nothing would change. Inishu inhaled deeply and nodded. Although it was challenging for him to accept, he had faith in his mother's wisdom. So what should I do, Mama? Learn, Ekudu replied succinctly. Train yourself. Strengthen your body and spirit so that when the opportune moment arrives, you'll be truly ready. From that day forward, Subaru dedicated himself to training. Fortunately, the village and the surrounding forest offered numerous instructors for an eager student. The village hunters were impressed by So's agility and inquisitiveness. A seasoned hunter named Okaka took him under his guidance. In the refreshing early hours, Okaka guided Subaru into the woods, instructing him on how to traverse quietly among the trees, interpret the animal tracks on the ground, and utilize a bow and arrow with lethal precision. At the beginning, Subaru's shots were awkward. He missed his targets and scared the game away, leading to moments of frustration. One morning, after failing to hit a deer, he angrily tossed the bow aside. Okaka clicked his tongue and retrieved the bow, placing it back into Subaru's hands. Patience, boy, the older hunter said in a composed manner. He was a lean man with wise eyes. The forest rewards patience. An angry hunter returns empty-handed. Thus, Subaru took a deep breath and nodded, feeling embarrassed by his outburst. He steadied his hands and attempted again, drawing the bowstring smoothly and waiting for the perfect moment. This time, his arrow flew straight, grazing the deer he had targeted. Although it was not a flawless shot, it represented progress. Okaka proudly patted his shoulder. In the afternoons, Subaru trained with a retired warrior named Guba, who had once served a local chief. Guba walked with a limp due to an old battle injury, yet he could still wield a spear and sword with great skill. With Guba, Subaru learned the art of close combat. They would engage in sparring sessions with wooden staffs in an open field near the village. Initially, Subaru charged forward with strength and rage, attempting to overpower Guba through sheer force. However, the older man was cunning. He evaded Subaru's strikes and tripped him with the end of the staff, sending Subaru tumbling into the dust. Guba chuckled lightly as Subaru spat out dirt. "Strength is beneficial," Guba remarked, extending a hand to assist him in getting up. "But strategy and a calm mind are what win battles. If you allow anger to control you, you become predictable once more." Subaru rubbed a bruise on his arm and adjusted his stance. This time, he concentrated not only on attacking but also on observing Guba's movements and anticipating them. They exchanged blows under the afternoon sun, and Subaru managed to last longer before Guba identified an opening and cracked his knuckles sharply. With each passing day, Subaru made significant progress. He became swifter and more accurate. He mastered the art of combat with both spear and sword, achieving a balance between defense and offense. The bruises that once marked his body gradually transformed into hardened muscle and quick reflexes. In the evenings after dinner, Subaru and Ikuto frequently spent time with a wise old sage residing on the outskirts of the village. This blind man, known as Onuna, was reputed to possess spiritual insight. Onuna would share tales by the hearth, recounting the stories of mighty kings who fell due to their pride and of humble men who ascended through their honor. Subaru listened with great attention, recognizing that these narratives held more than mere entertainment. They contained valuable lessons for his own path. One night, after most of the villagers had retired for the evening, Onuna addressed Subaru directly while Ikuto dozed beside him. The blind sage gazed into the flames and remarked, "Young man, I perceive a heavy burden upon your soul. You harbor anger and a yearning for justice. While this is not inherently negative, exercise caution. Vengeance can consume the one who harbors it." Surprised that the old man could discern his emotions, Subaru inquired softly, "What should I do with my anger then?" "Temper it into purpose," Onuna advised, "just as a blacksmith tempers iron in the fire to forge a strong sword. Do not allow it to engulf you in a wild blaze. Instead, shape it, control it, and wield it when the moment is appropriate. Until then, keep it sheathed." Subaru took these words to heart. In the months that followed, he indeed experienced a transformation. While he still felt anger and sorrow, he no longer permitted these emotions to dominate his daily life. Instead, he channeled his energy into self-improvement, becoming better, stronger, wiser, and more patient. He recalled how impulsive actions had nearly cost him and his mother their lives at the guest house. He came to understand that a king, or anyone aspiring to achieve greatness, must possess self-control. Ecuador observed her son with pride. Although he was far from the palace where he rightfully belonged, he was evolving into the kind of man Kingu would have admired, skilled, thoughtful, and humble at times. Subaru would rehearse what he might articulate or how he might act if he were to encounter Obioma. He would position himself behind their hut during the night and envision confronting the queen. In his imagination, he would declare, "I am Efetu's son. I have come to reclaim what was taken from me." However, there were moments when he questioned whether his aspiration to claim the throne was genuine or if it was more crucial to alleviate the suffering in it. Regardless, he understood the necessity of being prepared for both scenarios. The villagers were unaware of Sapuru's true identity. To them, he was merely Sapuru Chuku, a name he adopted as an extended version of Suru, and they presumed that Ikoto was either his aunt or mother who had experienced the loss of her husband. Sapuru gained their admiration through his diligence and courteousness. He assisted the elders in carrying firewood, engaged in play with the children, and never boasted about his abilities in hunting or sparring, even as he began to excel in those areas. In a sense, living incognito among modest individuals imparted more lessons on effective leadership than residing in a palace could have. He developed a sense of empathy for the lives and challenges faced by ordinary people. As the seasons changed, approximately a year elapsed, or perhaps slightly more, as Subaru lost precise track amidst the consistent rhythm of village life. By that time, he had established himself as one of the finest hunters and fighters in the region. Okaka jested that Sapporo could follow a hawk on a cloudy day, while Guba conceded that Sapporo's swordsmanship had outstripped his own. Nevertheless, Subaru remained composed and humble, expressing gratitude to his mentors for their support. Throughout this period, information from Ephite was limited. The village was distanced from significant trade routes, yet sporadic travelers from the Ite direction would pass through. Subaru always listened intently when he caught wind of news from his homeland. Unfortunately, most of the information was unfavorable. People discussed a stern queen, elevated taxes, and the emergence of unrest. Some merchants complained about the challenges of trade due to the queen's officials making transactions difficult. Each news snippet caused Subaru's heart to ache for Princess Omeisai and the people living under Obium's rule. He pondered what his half-sister might be enduring and silently prayed for her safety. Ekoto noticed the growing concern in Soro's eyes with each report from Ephite. She too yearned for their homeland and felt sorrow knowing the land was suffering under Obioma. However, mother and son seldom discussed it openly, both aware that there was little they could do at that moment. Instead, Ekoto encouraged Subaru to keep refining his skills and to find solace in simple moments, a quiet evening, a successful hunt, a kind conversation. "These will remind you of what you are fighting for," she said, gesturing to the friendly village surrounding them. "Good, ordinary people living without fear. This is what the land needs again someday." Soro nodded. He found comfort in small joys as he prepared for a greater purpose. Little did he realize that the time for that purpose was approaching. The whispers of Aoife's decline would soon reach them more clearly, and destiny, patient yet persistent, would soon summon Supunu to embark on the journey back home. Sapporo's days in the distant village flowed with a steady rhythm until one day, the outside world brought news that could not be overlooked. A group of weary travelers arrived, including several families who had fled their homes. As fate would have it, they hailed from a region not far from Ite. The villagers gathered to offer the newcomers water and food. Sapporo and Ikuto listened quietly as the travelers shared their story around a fire that evening. "We came from the border of Ite," an older man explained, his face etched with worry. "Conditions there have become very difficult. Queen Obi's grip is heavy on the land." Subaru leaned in, his heart racing. He had to restrain himself from asking too eagerly, so he remained silent and attentive. Another traveler, a woman with a baby, shook her head sadly. "It feels as if the kingdom is under a curse. The rains have been scarce. Crops are failing. People are in need, yet the queen's tax collectors remain indifferent. They seize even the scant resources that remain. My brother's family resided in the capital, accompanied by a younger man with a bandaged arm. He informed me that the atmosphere there is dreadful. Everyone is fearful of speaking out. Some of the royal guards have taken on the role of enforcers, intimidating the populace in the queen's name." He remarked that it feels as though the very essence of Ite is fading. The elderly man stirred the fire with a stick, causing sparks to rise. In a hushed tone, he stated, "People say the ancestors are displeased. They claim that the kingdom's fate has been betrayed, and now the land itself is ailing." Saboru and Ikuto exchanged a brief glance at these words, yet they remained silent. The villagers nearby murmured, crossing themselves or whispering prayers, as discussions of angry ancestors and fate seemed foreboding. "What do the people believe is the reason?" inquired a villager. The traveler woman cradling her baby responded, "There are rumors regarding the old king's concealed son. Some assert that Quinoa broke a promise to the spirits by denying him. Others claim she shed innocent blood to seize power. I cannot ascertain the truth, but everyone senses that something is profoundly amiss. Upon hearing this, Subaru had to avert his gaze to conceal the emotions flickering in his eyes. Here were strangers validating his fears. His kingdom was in distress, and part of it was indeed due to the broken oaths and violence of Obioma. After the conversation by the fire concluded, Subaru excused himself and stepped out to the outskirts of the village, standing beneath a large mahogany tree in the darkness. He required fresh air to clear his tumultuous thoughts. Ikoto followed him silently and found him there, fists clenched as he gazed at the distant stars. She understood her son well. She could almost sense the determination building within him like the warmth from a fire. Before she could speak, she placed a hand on his arm. "I know," she said softly. Sapura turned to her, and even in the dim moonlight, she could see the glimmer of tears in his eyes. "Mother, our people are starving and living in fear. How can I remain here while our home is suffering?" Io felt a weight in her heart. She had both dreaded and anticipated this moment. Taking a deep breath to compose herself, she softly replied, "You cannot stay. The time has come." Sapporo gazed at his mother, his expression a blend of relief and sorrow. He had expected her to urge patience once more, but instead, she was in agreement. "Do you genuinely believe I should return?" he inquired. Ikuto's voice quivered slightly. "Yes, I believe destiny has finished waiting. If it calls for you, my son." The elder remarked, "The land is decaying. I sense it as well. The longer we delay, the more our people suffer, and the more perilous Obama's madness becomes. Your father's kingdom requires its rightful heir." Sapporo embraced his mother tightly, fulfilling a longing he had held back out of respect for her caution. Now, with her approval, his purpose felt unmistakable. "I will go," he murmured. "I will do whatever is necessary to save our people and honor my father's legacy." Ikuto held him close, stroking his back as if he were a young boy once more. "My brave boy," she said softly, "but we must exercise caution. You cannot return as Prince Sapporo. Not yet." Sapporo nodded against her shoulder. "I understand. If Obama discovers I am alive and approaching, she will attempt to kill me again."
"Precisely," Io replied.
She pulled back to meet his gaze. Even in the dim light, the resolve in Sapporo's expression was unmistakable. "You must travel in secrecy as an unknown, just another wandering warrior or traveler. Conceal your identity until the opportune moment arises." Sapporo comprehended. Over the past year, he had become adept at living under a simple disguise. "I will adopt a false name and travel lightly. I can claim to be an orphaned fighter seeking work." Ikoto managed a small smile. "Given how you have assisted this village, that would be credible." "You are practically a one-man army now," she teased gently. Sapporo returned her smile. Though his eyes glistened with unshed tears, he understood that departing would entail saying goodbye to his mother for a period. "Will you be okay if I leave?" Ikuto took a deep breath, suppressing her own anxieties. "I will manage. I might remain here for some time, or possibly go to stay with my cousin in another town for safety. But do not concern yourself with me. Focus on your mission." Sapporo grasped his mother's hands. "As soon as it is safe, I will send for you. I promise." "I know you will," Akira replied, squeezing his hands. "And Sapporo, once you arrive, trust no one with your secret until you are completely certain. There may be individuals who would betray you to gain favor with the queen." "I will be cautious," Sapporo assured her. The following days were a whirlwind of preparations and farewells. Sapporo did not disclose the true reason for his departure to the villagers. He merely stated that he needed to return to his homeland to attend to family matters. Since they all believed Io was his only family, some found it confusing, but none probed too deeply, respecting his privacy. Okaka the hunter frowned when Sapporo informed him of his departure. He remarked, "I thought you might settle here permanently, lad. But if you must leave, then take this with you." He handed Sapporo a finely crafted bow. It was Okaka's own bow, polished and sturdy. You have become like a son to me in spirit. Take my bow, and may it protect and sustain you on your journey." Sapporo was profoundly moved. "Thank you, Okaka. I will honor your gift." Guba the warrior also presented Sapporo with a farewell gift, a short sword with a leather scabbard. It was not ornate, but its blade was sharp and dependable. "I forged this blade myself years ago," he stated. "Not as beautiful as palace swords, but it will serve its purpose. You have learned well, boy. Keep your wits sharp and your sword even sharper." Ona, the blind sage, simply offered a blessing. He traced a symbol on Sapporo's forehead with ash and murmured an ancient prayer for safe travels and true purpose. "The wind speaks to me," he said softly with a smile, indicating that you are following the path laid out by your ancestors. "Travel well, young one." Ikoto spent the previous night preparing some necessities for Sapporo: dried provisions, a water god, and a blanket. She also took care to fold a significant item and presented it to him privately. It was the ornamental dagger of King Efetu, which Efetu had discreetly sent years ago in a supply package to aid in their protection. The hilt of the dagger displayed the royal emblem of It, a coiled python, but Ikoto had wrapped the leather covering to conceal it. "Keep this concealed," she advised. "But remember that you carry a piece of your father with you." Sapporo accepted the dagger and pressed it against his chest for a brief moment. It felt like a warm reassurance. "Thank you, mother." At dawn, Sapporo was prepared to leave. He donned simple travel attire, a coarse brown tunic, a cloak, and sandals. He carried a bundle of his few possessions slung over his back, his new sword at his side, an Okaka's bow, and a quiver of arrows on his shoulder. With his modest clothing and composed demeanor, he resembled any other young warrior for hire traversing the roads. Ikoto accompanied him to the village's edge. The morning light was golden, dew glistened on the grass, and birds chirped from the trees. A deceptively lovely day to commence such a serious undertaking. Mother and son faced each other one final time. She fought back tears, but one escaped and trickled down her cheek. Subaru gently wiped away the tear. "I will return, mother. I promise I will see you again when this is finished." "I know, my son," Aya whispered, enveloping him in a tight embrace. For a prolonged moment, she held him, imprinting the sensation of his strong back and the rhythm of his heartbeat in her memory. She silently prayed to the gods and Toyota spirits to safeguard their boy. At last, she released him. So knelt and respectfully touched her feet, a gesture of farewell and gratitude. I lifted him up and cradled his face in her hands. "Remember who you are," she said gently. "But also keep in mind the kind of man you have become here. Let that be your guide. Not anger, not revenge, but love for your people and the memory of those who sacrificed for you." Subaru nodded, his eyes glistening. "I will remember. Take care of yourself, and thank you for everything." With that, Subaru turned and began his journey down the dirt road, leading east towards It. Ikuto watched him until his figure diminished and the forest seemed to engulf him. She lingered at the end of the path long after he was out of sight, whispering prayers and reassurances to herself that he would be safe. It was the most difficult thing she had ever done, allowing her only son to walk alone into peril. Yet, she steeled her heart with the understanding that this was his fate. Subaru traveled for days, drawing ever closer to the kingdom he had departed. Along the way, he joined small groups of merchants or other travelers when it was convenient, both for safety and to avoid attracting attention by being solitary. At night, by the communal fires, he listened more than he spoke, absorbing any news regarding It. He heard further accounts of Queen Obama's stringent rule. A merchant mentioned high tariffs at the border. A farmer recounted a cousin imprisoned for protesting taxes. Subaru's determination only intensified upon hearing these stories. Whenever inquired about himself, Subaru adhered to a straightforward narrative. He was a wandering warrior in search of honest work, perhaps as a guard or a fighter in any village that required assistance. His adept archery and calm demeanor led most to accept his tale without doubt. After several weeks, The silhouette of familiar mountains and forests indicated to Subaru that he was approaching the borders. One evening, standing on a hill, he could see the faint glow of a town that he knew lay just within Ite's territory. He inhaled deeply. It felt both unusual and invigorating to be so near to home after all this time and under such circumstances. Cloaked in the shadows of dusk, Sapporo re-entered the kingdom of Ite, not as a prince returning in triumph, but as an unnamed warrior with a quiet purpose igniting within his heart. The familiar air of his homeland filled his lungs, and he murmured to himself, "I have returned, father. I am back." He understood that the journey was far from complete. In reality, it was just beginning. Ahead lay the true challenge. To live under Obi's watchful eye without revealing his true identity, to assess the condition of the palace and its people, and to identify the right moment to disclose the truth and fulfill the destiny that had been denied for so long. With determined steps, Sapporo advanced down the path toward the capital of Ite, prepared to assume the guise of a nobody for as long as necessary until the moment arrived for him to become the person that destiny required him to be.